our next two presenters, Shudipta Islam and Amina Khan. So Shudipta holds a Master of Public Health from the University of Toronto with a dual specialization in global health and community development. Her personal and professional interests lie at the intersection of health, social justice, and policy. She is particularly passionate about how race and racialization interact with social determinants to create stark health disparities across communities, and how policies can shape healthy environments. In addition to her work with diabetes for South Asian youth, Shudipta has worked at the City of Toronto, conducting research to assess the socio-political landscape of the Ontario Works program, and at Youth Research Evaluation Exchange, consulting Ontario's grassroots youth sector to develop and conduct evaluations. Currently, Shudipta works at the Wellesley Institute as a Community Violence Exposure Project researcher in partnership with the City of Toronto. Our next presenter is Amina Khan, who is a Master of Public Health graduate from the Dalai Lama School of Public Health. She holds a degree in kinesiology and health sciences and worked as a nutritionist prior to her graduate studies. Amina's work, volunteer, and research experience span from the grassroots community level to public health governance. This experience has led her to work at organizations such as Polycultural Immigrant and Community Service, the South Asian Adolescents Diabetes Awareness Program, Princess Margaret Hospital, and the Public Health Agency of Canada. Amina's passions lie in the intersection of health equity and social justice, as well as finding ways to use the arts to address health inequities. We are happy to have you today, so the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Agafia and Dr. Bouillon. I'm going to share my screen, so please let me know if everyone can see it okay. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Agafia, and hello to everyone here today. So today, Amina and I are here to talk to you about the diabetes action and prevention among South Asian youth in Ontario. Before we get started, I just wanted to make a quick note. The two of us, we're presenting from Toronto, Canada, and we just wanted to take a short moment to acknowledge the land that we live and work on. So with that, we'd like to recognize and acknowledge that the land we're on today has been the site of human activity for 15,000 years. And many Indigenous nations have long-standing relationships with this land, which far and long precede the establishment of our institution. This land is the territory of the Huron-Wendat and Petun First Nations, the Seneca, and the Mississaugas of the Credit River.
Apologies there, I couldn't unmute myself. To just continue off of what Shudi was saying, as South Asian immigrants and settlers on this land, we are not only cognizant of the historical injustices which have taken place and continue to take place in Canada, but how these injustices allow us to reap the benefits of this land today. There is an ongoing need to make right with all of our relations. So hello again, everyone. We'd like to start by thanking Dr. Bouillon for granting us the opportunity to be with you all today, to speak alongside such incredible speakers that had wonderful presentations. It's great to meet all of you virtually, and thank you for joining us.
I think, Amina, your sound system is echo, making some vibration. Internet connection seems unstable.
It's unstable. Can you hear me okay, or is
now
the
okay? But there is a background something echo.
There's an echo. Okay.
I can hear okay.
You can hear
Yes.
okay?
Okay.
If it happens again, someone just jump in because I can't quite see the chat.
Now okay, go ahead.
I'm going to try to keep an eye on both, but yeah, let me know if it's unclear. Yeah, so we were just introducing ourselves. So my name is Amina Khan.
And my name is Shudipta Islam, and we're both public health professionals, and we're coming here from the South Asian Health Research Hub, also known as SAHAR. SAHAR is based out of the Dalhousie School of Public Health at the University of Toronto, and it's comprised of a network of scholars, health professionals, students, and volunteers from a diversity of age groups, genders, and ethnicities. And we're really committed to advancing the health of South Asians in Canada through research practice and advocacy. So before we get started today, I'd like to give you a quick overview of our presentation. We're going to be starting with a brief explanation of the diabetes landscape in Canada and also amongst South Asians living in Canada. We'll then be talking about the diabetes intervention and prevention program that SAHAR has been working on over the past couple of years. And finally, we're going to be leaving you with some key learnings and takeaways from our experience with this program.
So from a very big picture, and as many of you are aware, diabetes prevalence is on the rise. The global prevalence of diabetes has risen exponentially over the past 10 years, and this trend has been particularly apparent with type 2 diabetes specifically. This trend is really owing to a transformation or an evolution of sorts to a whole host of modifiable as well as non-modifiable risk factors. And the latest data suggests that globally around 500 million people have type 2 diabetes. Canada is certainly not immune to this trend. In Canada, over 2 million Canadians are currently diagnosed with diabetes, and this chronic condition is on the list of the top 10 leading causes of mortality in the country. One province in particular stands out with regards to this, and that is the province of Ontario, the one we are actually currently speaking from. The diabetes prevalence rates in Ontario is not only higher than the national average, but one of the highest in the country, and we're only seeing increases in these numbers. Now, the story doesn't quite end here. The risk of diabetes is increasing, yes, but not everyone experiences the risk in the same sort of way. So compared to other ethnic groups, South Asians face disproportionately higher risks of type 2 diabetes. South Asians comprise of about 20% of the world's population, but experience rates of diabetes that are 50% higher than the general population. Canada, again, is no exception to this trend. The South Asian diaspora represents one of the fastest growing minority groups in the country, but the diabetes numbers amongst our population are stark. So South Asians living in Canada are actually 3 to 6 times more likely to develop diabetes compared to white Canadians. South Asians also report higher rates of insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, at lower adiposity. And while the prevalence of diabetes is highest in the age group of 50 years and older in the general population, South Asians are actually diagnosed 5 to 10 years earlier. Now, within Canada, one region actually stands out exceptionally for its high rates of diabetes, and that is actually the region of Peel. So Peel region consists of the city of Mississauga, Brampton, and the town of Caledon. And to give you a better sense of what Peel is like compared to the rest of Ontario, Peel has a younger population, fewer people living alone, more persons who identify as being a part of a visible minority, and much, much higher rates of immigration. Peel has a couple of areas of concentrated population within central Mississauga and downtown Brampton, but in general, it's characterized by its low population density. And so the reason why we bring this up is because the design of the city is strongly associated with higher car use, and the city's structure doesn't really lend itself well to things like walking or cycling. And on top of that, a lot of recent immigration to Peel actually has been from regions of the world with high rates of obesity and higher rates of diabetes. So with some of these characteristics in mind, we see that the diabetes numbers in Peel are very high. Currently, 1 in 10 adults in Peel has diabetes, and by 2025, that number is projected to be about 1 in 6. And most notably of all, Peel happens to be home to 1/5 of Canada's South Asian population.
So you've probably gathered by now that diabetes poses a pretty significant risk to the South Asian community. And unfortunately, this threat is exacerbated by the fact that diabetes risk is transmitted intergenerationally. What we're seeing is not only that children are at an increased risk of type 2 diabetes because of their family histories, but also that they face these risks at younger and younger ages. And this trend is actually a pretty stark contrast from the more pervasive ideas that diabetes largely only impacts adults and seniors. So this leaves us with a challenge. The challenge to break this cycle by increasing awareness for youth who will go on to become the next generation. So to address this, the Sahar team implemented a program called the South Asian Adolescent Diabetes Awareness Program, which is also known as SADAP. SADAP is a multi-phase project which targets South Asian youth in the Peel region with a family history of type 2 diabetes, so either parents or grandparents. And SADAP has 3 key objectives. The first is to increase healthy behaviors related to physical activity and nutrition. The second is to increase general diabetes knowledge and awareness in relation to the social determinants of diabetes. And the third, which is to foster knowledge mobilization and advocacy. So phase 1 of the SADAP program consisted of a diabetes awareness and education program that was piloted back in 2018. We're going to play a short video on this program to give you a better sense of what SADAP was like.
Plus or not?
This is a health promotion program, but it's not simply a health education program. We're not simply just asking or teaching the youth how to exercise and eat properly. We know those are important components to help reduce their risk of diabetes, but we have a whole social advocacy piece that is part of this program. What we're trying to do is understand and explore what we call the social determinants of health, really acknowledging that there's a huge variety of factors that impact the health and quality of life of our participants. So we're having conversations about food insecurity, food access, body image, the built environment in the neighborhoods that our participants live in, the school environment where they spend so much of their time. So it's really important for us to look at diabetes prevention holistically like that. So that we can take a multi-level approach and hopefully help these youths make lasting changes throughout their lives.
So the program includes meetings with dietitians.
So for the sake of time, we just showed you a small snippet, but if anyone's interested in watching the full video, please get in touch with us and we'll be happy to send you a link. It's on the Sahar website. But we just really wanted to give you an idea of what SADAP phase 1 looked like. And the pilot program actually caught the attention of, caught a lot of attention and even had a feature article in the CBC. And the research team, observed a couple of really interesting things from the first phase. For the sake of time and your interest, I'm keeping the findings pretty high level here, but what we saw amongst our participants was that there was an increase in healthier food choices and physical activity, which, as you probably already know, are 2 of the most important modifiable risk factors when it comes to type 2 diabetes. And in addition to that, we also observed that there was an increase in them encouraging other people in their networks to also engage in healthier lifestyle choices, like their friends and their family. And to an extent, some of these results were to be expected, right? There is a lot of literature out here showing us that lifestyle interventions do have a degree of success in creating lifestyle changes in either the short, medium, or long term. But what was really striking to us as a team was that despite the increases in making better lifestyle choices, our participants' risk perceptions of diabetes didn't change in almost half of our sample. And actually, the risk perception increased in about 20% of our sample. So considering lifestyle choices on its own wasn't sufficient. And so there was this really big picture here that we needed to consider. And so that's where SATAP really began to evolve as a program. We really wanted to shift the narrative from, saying change your lifestyle into why do we have the lifestyle that we have? We didn't just want to have a conversation about modifiable risk factors. In the case of diabetes, things like diet and physical activities as key ones, but we really wanted to contextualize them as well. And we did this using a model called the socio-ecological model, or the SEM. So the SEM framework really just asserts that your lifestyle is directly impacted by the environment around you. And the SEM framework shows us that your behavioral choices are not only a subset of your lifestyle, which is at the individual level. So it's the individual choice to lead a healthier life, but our lives are also heavily influenced by other things like the immediate people around us, people like our family, our close friends, our partners. And it's also impacted by the institutions we go to, the communities that we're in, and by the governments that we live under. So as a team, Sahar was really, really mindful that if you wanted to break the cycle of diabetes in the South Asian community, especially by targeting the youth population, then we really wanted to implement an intervention that was holistic and took into account the different levels of the SEM.
So as Shudi explained, to really take that conversation further and address some of those upstream factors, we worked with the youth in the second phase of this program. So the second phase of this program was actually a photo voice project under the name of Beyond the Body. And much like the title of this program, the purpose was to engage in youth in that conversation, in that knowledge, in that awareness that really went beyond just talking about lifestyle behavioral factors. We didn't want the awareness program to solely be centered at the individual level. So we didn't want to just talk about what we're eating and how much we're exercising and how that affects diabetes risk. We wanted to push them further and start thinking about those broader forces that moderate these choices. And so we centered the conversation on those broader determinants of health, or as we call them, the social determinants of health. And again, thinking back to what Shudi explained, that socio-ecological framework, we encourage the youth to think about ideas of how the people around you impact your health and your lifestyle, how the institutions we go to, like where we work or where we go to school, impact our choices, and how our community or neighborhoods can change our health. And finally, what kind of policies are in place to govern the kind of choices that are available and accessible to us. And so in order to do that, we used an arts-based research method called photo voice. So photo voice is essentially a research method which uses photography and stories about these photographs as a means to represent issues of importance. So for Beyond the Body, photo voice was a research but also critical thinking method that helped enable these South Asian youth to explore their experiences of diabetes risk, share those experiences, and then also work to collaborate and advocate for their community. So as a result of this project, we actually had about 18 photographs and captions from the youth participants. And what you see in front of you on the slide is actually one of them. So each photo captured really speaks to the upstream factors that are pertinent to their individual lives. And in this photo in particular, we see a bouquet of flowers that's on a bench. And in the caption, we see that the participant is talking about how these flowers aren't able to thrive because they're not in the right environment. And so the youth really use this as a metaphor for the experiences of immigrants who have qualifications and education, but aren't able to use those because they're in a different system where their experiences aren't considered as valid. For the sake of time, I'm just going to skip over the next photograph. And I'm going to quickly jump to our Youth Health Awareness Council. So we mentioned the program started in 2018 and it came to a wrap up earlier this year. But after completing the SATAP program and the Photo Voice project, a group of 9 adolescents continued to work with our research team and actually formed this Youth Health Awareness Council. So afterwards, we continued to meet with them to build on some of the ideas that we did in the research study and really help mobilize their work in health equity. A major objective of the Council is to teach South Asian youth on how to use their personal and educational power to contribute to more positive health promotion and healthcare experiences for their community. And to put faces to the name, these are them. They are a group of amazing young female South Asians between the ages of 15 and 19. They are dedicated, passionate young minds that want to mobilize and become agents of change in their community. And Shudi and I have had the pleasure of working with them for the past 2 years, and the growth that we've seen in them, the confidence, the learning has been truly inspiring. And so we went from really teaching them things to now working alongside the Youth Council, where we are currently working with them on a project for the Canadian Cancer Society, and they're helping to inform this marketing campaign and increase representation of South Asian women within that campaign.
So SADAP is really an example of kind of this urgent need to look at the complex, multidimensional nature of health and of diabetes. I think too often we ask people to change their lifestyle for the sake of health without really considering, how do the socio-political and ecological landscape around them, how do they act as barriers or facilitators to these changes? And for us, it was essential to hear about what our youth participants had to say about these unique experiences with things like immigration, their school policies, their societal expectations, and even broader systemic issues like food insecurity and racial disparities. It was so essential to understand the type of environments in which they live in, work in, and play in. And it was really important for us to not just stop there. Once our youth participants were engaged in these critical discussions, they had this momentum to create change through advocacy and action. And they went from being participants in like a research study to being agents of change. And so that's how we were able to really mobilize research and knowledge into action. So we want to leave you guys, the audience, with 3 kind of key takeaways from SADAP. And the first is that, lifestyle matters, but prevention and awareness initiatives need to adopt a holistic framework to inform their understanding. And the second is youth are really indispensable catalysts of change. I think often we think of youth and, we think that they might not have capacity or power, but they actually have a lot of strengths to give us, and they have a lot of capacity to make change in their communities. And community mobilization is really an essential part of health promotion work, and you really can't do it without mobilizing the community. We'd also like to share that Sahar is producing and launching a short film, which will be featuring all of our youth participants and their photographs in our Beyond the Body virtual photo exhibit event. It's really a one-of-a-kind visual production on a key public health issue, and it's going to be coming in January of 2021. This short film is actually being produced and edited by Amina and myself, and collectively we actually work together on several projects that look at the intersection between the arts and social and behavioral health sciences. And using things like photography, graphic design, videography, and art, we've really cultivated this diverse and innovative and creative way to advance the mission of public health. So we're really excited about the film, and we invite all of you to join us for the event should it interest you. The registration link will be made available in the coming weeks, so please feel free to get in touch if you're interested. And we also wanted to just take a quick moment to acknowledge our wonderful team and our principal investigator, Dr. Ananya Banerjee, as well as our partners and funders from the Lawson Foundation, Diabetes Canada, and the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council.